it's a complicated thing because there are two levels. There is first of all the drug problem we are told we have, which is too many people are taking too many bad drugs and committing crimes in order to obtain money to buy drugs, or committing crimes in order to transport, manufacture, and deal drugs. And this has dehumanized our society, and it's a terrible scourge, and we have to do something about it. That's level one of the drug problem. What you are not told is that governments are the chief offenders. Most drugs in the world are either produced by governments or produced with the connivance of governments. And our little bailiwick, the psychedelics, don't even figure in this issue because not enough money is being made. The only psychedelic that ever made anybody any money was LSD. And on a scale where we're talking about methamphetamine, cocaine, and heroin, the fortunes made off of LSD were minuscule. The drug thing is a con. Governments need vast amounts of untraceable cash, they believe, because they turn it over to their secret police agencies who then pursue secret agendas where they try to control events by illicit and non-sanctioned means. And by that I mean rigging elections, murdering labor leaders, hounding liberal editors into retirement, smearing people, so forth and so on. The hard drug markets of this world are entirely in the hands of government. You know, somebody pulls a stunt in Kuwait, and we're there in a moment. We send troops to Haiti, but these mysterious jungle warlords in Burma seem untouchable. Nothing can be done. They're beyond the reach of any army, any aerial bombing campaign. It's just mysteriously indestructible, these warlords in Burma. Well, it's because they are the producing end of an illicit, world-girdling organization whose purpose is to deliver drugs to the market. And I believe that the CIA got into this game because, you could almost say, for good reason from their point of view. The CIA in the middle 60s, as well as the rest of the American establishment, was confronted with the spectacle of black people determined to burn down the core of every city in America until they got social justice. The decision was made to bring hundreds of tons of chemically, pharmaceutically pure China White No. 3 heroin into those ghettos and just basically dump it on the ground and see what happened. And it totally broke the back of black radicalism and turned everybody into a junkie or a gangster somewhere in that system. Well, then when we lost the Vietnam War, the way the geopolitical thing came down was Khomeini got the heroin industry, and China White was traded in for Iranian brown, a lower grade of heroin. Well, since Khomeini is not a nice man in our pantheon, heroin suddenly became, highly repressed. But at the same time, as the Vietnam War wound down, these insurgencies in South America were being started up, and cocaine was brought onto the scene. And I can remember in like 72, 73, 74, a particular cover of Time magazine, cocaine, the new drug of choice. And it was just this far short of an endorsement. It was all about movie stars were doing it and everybody was doing it, a huge picture of lines on the cover. That's a decision to sell. That's an ad campaign, a very high-profile ad campaign. Well, I think I said to you yesterday, in the international drug trade, the real cost of these drugs is in transporting them, because you have to pay somebody to bring 10 kilos of heroin into the United States. Unless you know fools, you're going to have to pay them $40,000 or $50,000, a fraction of the worth of that heroin. But nevertheless, if you haven't sold it yet, maybe it's tricky to get that kind of scratch together. Well, that's for 10 kilos of junk. You have to pay $50,000 to transport it. But if you have a C-130, you can bring 50,000 pounds of heroin, and it will cost you far less per unit volume. So the CIA had all these airplanes, and they simply diverted them to the drug trade. You probably have been following this recent scandal involving the U.S. Forest Service. Has this been in the papers here? It's been well rehearsed in Hawaii. Well, as you know, the U.S. Forest Service uses C-130s to drop fire-retardant chemicals on forest fires. When the Air Force was downsizing 3 years ago, the Forest Service requisitioned 15 C-130s. By manipulating paperwork and painting out serial numbers and painting on other serial numbers, only 3 of those C-130s ever reached the Forest Service. The other 12 mysteriously disappeared. Do you know what a C-130 looks like? Do you know how hard it is to lose one of those puppies? 12 of them disappeared without a trace. Well, guess where? And guess what they're lugging back and forth? Now, the CIA itself is addicted to the money. The original impulse, break the back of black radicalism, has been replaced by a more obvious impulse, make a lot of money. Where do you get a quick $1 billion if you need it in a hurry? It's called, you take a floater on drugs. That's what you do. And the amount of money is so great that anyone can be corrupted. These boats that come up from Colombia that lie off the coast of Florida, the so-called motherships, a guy with a fast cigarette boat can make 3 trips to and from one of those motherships on a cloudy night. The standard pay for one of those trips, which takes about 40 minutes, is $125,000. You can make $375,000 a night doing this, and you're not a player, you're not a kingpin, you're not a major figure, you're a totally disposable peon. So imagine how much money there is to be made at the top. Who can refuse a $10 million bribe? You know, people come in and say, listen, we'd like to give you $10 million, and we've bought a house for you in the highlands of Malaysia and a Ferrari, and we'd just like you to go and live there and do whatever you want. And the choice is a bullet in the head. So which would you prefer? We're perfectly at ease either way, so you figure it out and call us back. Nobody can resist that kind of thing. So we're in a situation where we are being radically manipulated by governments because they are addicted to a style of piratical rogue capitalism that is just simply the greatest windfall ever imagined. I mean, there has never been anything like the modern illicit drug trade in the history of the world. 10 years ago, the drug trade and the international arms trade were on a par with each other. Today, the international drug trade makes 10 times as much money as the international arms trade, and there's no end in sight. From observing American society as long as I have, it's very clear to me they don't hand out rights around here. The only people who have any rights are people who demand them. And you can look at how black people broke free in the 60s. You can look at how the gay community got itself together in the 70s and 80s. And apparently, unless you're willing to stand up for what you are, you're going to be forever stigmatized. It was it was, black people, they couldn't escape it. The reflectivity of their skin marked them. But it was very, very courageous for gay people, many of whom were way in the closet and doing well in straight society, to risk all that and say, no, look, this is what's going on. This is who I am. Now, if there's a problem, it's your problem, not my problem. And homosexuality was a crime in many states, in most states, just as drugs are. So I think really, if we're serious, we're going to have to risk something. We're going to have to risk our jobs, our reputations, perhaps some of our friendships, and just say, look, this is what it is. Now, if you don't like it, don't do it. But don't legislate for the rest of us. Society is a very complex enterprise, and what's good for you may not be good for me. And if it's to be done in mass action, that's better. We all feel better if we march in a group than if we march alone. But we drug people are incredibly, we fold too easily, I think. I think we feel great shame on some level about what we've done. I mean, it's very hard to stand up to a really straight person and say, yeah, no, I didn't try it. I just did it 10 minutes ago. We're not talking about my wild college days. We're talking about 35 seconds before I stood in your presence. And see, I'm not falling down. I'm not about to commit murder. I'm just like you are, except I have this different preference. And force that. And it's the task of a generation. You know, the right wing, they understand far better than we do. I mean, when Pat Buchanan says it's cultural war, he's talking about us. We're the counterculture. We're the enemy. And the response of a desperate foe is an ever more desperate lashing out. And Christianity is not going to go quietly into that good night. It's going to get nuttier as it approaches its terminal delirium. The killing of abortion doctors is a good example. What does that do for the Right to Life movement? It totally discredits them. It moves them from a position that is maybe different from yours but arguable to just nuts. We no longer have to make any kind of effort to sway those people or come to terms with them. They're crazy people.